Okay, I want to welcome everyone to, I think, week 4 of xEssentials Season 2. This week, we've got Clyde Lindsey presenting on the hidden features in xLights. Really appreciate Clyde stepping up this week. Hidden features in xLights. Clyde, you've got the floor.
All right. Well, first of all, a huge thank you for letting me be here. So, the when Keith, whenever Ed mentioned to me how he'd like to have me do a xEssentials, I said, of course, just give me the direction on which one I should do, because for me, it's really hard to come up with great ideas. And Ed said, well, what about doing something on the secrets in xLights? And I thought that's very fitting for something that I've been able to. I've worked with the software now. It's been for 7 years, 8 years, 7 years with xLights, and so many things have changed, and things have progressed through the years. And there's a lot of great videos out there, but there's also a lot of content inside xLights that I take for granted that many people just don't know about. And so I'm going to do my best to go through everything that I can that will truly try to highlight some of the, not just the features, but the features that maybe you're not aware of. So with that being said, there we go. The first question is, why would there ever be a hidden feature in xLights? And I can honestly tell you that there has never been a feature that to my knowledge, now I'm not a developer, but to my knowledge, there's no feature that's ever been hidden on purpose. So the question is, where are they found? And the biggest answer is release notes. You can always look for everything that has been added or changed in xLights just by simply looking at the release notes. And I truly believe that if you take a deep dive into the release notes, you will learn far more about the program and some of the abilities. But also, not just that, but you'll also know who is doing the commitments into xLights. You'll see who's generating what content that actually gets to be put into the program. So release notes are very important. Now, if you're just a basic user, you open up xLights, to do your sequencing for your show, and that's it. And you put it away, and 6 months later, you look at it in the summertime and say, "Oh, I've got to start sequencing." Release notes might not be something that you're truly interested in, but if you want to learn what's happened in the past 6 months or over a period of time, you can do that very easily, and we'll show you tonight how to do that. So the biggest way to find information is to look at the release videos that are done by Keith, Gil, Dan, Scott, and Kevin. Any of the developers, they're the ones who physically write the program. The other side of the coin is videos that are used by the software users. The videos that someone like me or a number of other people, Steve Jerome, he's done a number of videos as well, and I apologize because I didn't add him into the slides later tonight, but there are a number of xLights users who do share tidbits of information, although their YouTube channels at this point, I can't remember all of the small the videos that have been done other than the ones that maybe I've created. So I have a couple goals for tonight, and I think the major goal is to get through a lot of the major features in the program that maybe you don't know about. I'm going to touch on a lot of things. For example, the setup tab, the layout tab, and the sequence tab. I'm also going to go through the file menu, which is the menu that goes across the top of the screen, where you have a lot of drop downs. And then I'm going to touch on the sequencing icons and the function icons that are available. I'm not going to do absolutely everything. There's just absolutely no way to do everything. So, but overall, I'd really like for everybody tonight, and I'm going to try to be realistic, because many people, I've been using xLights 7 years now. I've been using xLights 4 since 2015. Where I think xLights 4 was released in the current version that we're using on April 22nd in 2015. And I had the opportunity to learn xLights through the alpha program, which was when we were trying to just make it work and just, can you click and drag, and you couldn't sequence with it. And does it work on your Windows 10? Does it work on your Windows 7? Does it work on your Linux? Does it work on on a Mac and so forth. So learning from the beginning, I have kind of a heads up on it ahead of time than most people do, but I really would hope that even if you've been along with xLights, that you'll learn at least 10 things that you didn't really know about, or that you have a question, and at the end when we go through the Q&A, that you'll actually be able to bring that up so that we can kind of clear up some of that. So with that being said, these are the expectations that I hope you would have while you're watching tonight's presentation. This is certainly not going to be a deep dive presentation. There's no way to do in xEssentials a deep dive into anything that is wholly based around xLights. The expectation is, if you see it, try using it. If you don't use it, you're going to lose it. So when you see something that really catches your eye, go back to the recording and or mark it down at the time that you see this, and then go back and kind of start looking at those things that really piqued your interest. Because everything, let's be honest, everything may not be interesting to everybody, but there's points in this where if you don't take some active steps in the learning, you're not going to get the full value of everything that's in the program. And it's okay too if you don't want to do that. I understand that. There's a lot of people that just really enjoy watching this stuff and learning more about what's in it. So for those people, I think that that's going to be something that's going to be helpful. So will this make me a better sequencer? Actually, the only thing I can tell you about sequencing is that sequencing is it's a very artistic way of expressing yourself, and art in itself is subjective. So learning more about the program and how the program works is the best way I can tell you to become a better sequencer. The other thing is xLights. This is an xLights greatest hits kind of movement video. This is probably going to be an hour plus. I tried to go through the presentation yesterday, and I got halfway through it in 1 hour. I have highly cut out a lot of things because there's just so much great stuff in xLights. So I'm focusing on the greatest hits with mostly the stuff that you don't or may not know as much about. So there is a lot of current videos too as well on these topics, and when appropriate, I will try to make note of when there is a video on something that you can go look for, and exactly where those places to find those videos are at. As a warning before we start, the right-click menu anywhere in xLights, don't be afraid to point at anything and hit the right-click menu. There is a right-click menu everywhere, and you just don't know it. Right-click is, I wouldn't say that it's a hidden feature, but there are a lot of features that when you do use right-click, you will find menus, and we're going to try to hit some of the major ones, the ones that I know in sequencing that are probably the most useful for me. But again, I can't know exactly what it is that you've used or what you don't know is available. So I'm going to go through as much as I can, and hopefully as we go through this, you'll pick up a number of things. As I said, I really hope that everybody will pick up at least 10 things from this. So we're going to start our journey in xLights with the Setup tab. And if we look at the Setup tab, the first thing we're going to notice, if we go into xLights, we have a Setup tab, and the left-hand side of the screen will show us the Save Setup, the Add USB, the Add E131, and that whole menu on the left-hand side. One of the things that when you create a brand new universe, you can always click on Add E131, and you bring up this dialog box here that allows you to create universes. I think one of the greatest additions in the Setup tab in this box is the one output box. So for many people, the controllers that you use in your displays, let's say you're using a Falcon controller that has 48 outputs, and you're going to have 50 universes that are assigned to run from that one controller. It makes kind of logical sense to go in and say, oh, I can create universe 1 through 50, give it this IP address, and put it on one line number, or what we call an output number in xLights. And that saves all of this long space here. Instead of putting 50 individual lines in, we're only putting one individual line in with a block of universes dedicated to that controller. So this I think is something huge, and if you haven't noticed this, try going through and starting to look at how your setup is. Maybe rearrange your channels and put them in blocks. Start labeling those as those channels and outputs that you need, and allow xLights to really make it easy on your setup. Next is the add E131 individual universes, whereas you can add the individual universes one at a time down below. You can add in, like I said, it is multicast here, and it really doesn't matter for demonstration purposes, but you can add in 50 individual universes if that's your desire. And this is the way xLights was built, but you can always add in 1 or 2 or 3 more. You can also edit any one of these. You're able to go in and right-click on any of these to do some editing, and there is a right-click menu again. So the right-click menus that you see here in this would be your universe channel list here. You have all your universes. You can select multiple ones at a time, and there I think the most important thing that you can find here is the bulk edit in the setup tab, where as you're going through your setup and your layout, you can bulk edit. Right click, bulk edit, and here under the bulk edit you can change your IP address, you can change your channel numbers, which is the number of channels that are listed in them. You can change a description or change them all to one specific description, so that if you do look at the network page, you can tell right away, oh, this block of universes or these universes are meant for this controller or that zone of my display. You can also suppress duplicate frames. Keith can tell you more about that. I have not practiced that very much. And then, and as you can see, also there is a significant number of other right-click options. You can delete, you can bulk delete everything here that you've selected. You can activate and deactivate. So. 2 years ago, I had the experience of stuttering whenever I was outputting to lights. I had everything in my universe set to multicast, and the stutter was coming from so much data going out to my display with a bigger display than I'd ever had, and this is obviously 2 years ago. I had to convert over from multicast into unicast, so I went through, and bulk edit wasn't a thing, I don't think, back then. So I had to manually go in and reappropriate every single line to match the IP address where that was going out to. It was a little bit of work, but I was able also to identify props and models that I had thought I was going to build for the year, but I didn't have enough time to. So the recommendation that Keith gave me was to deactivate some of those channels since you're not using them. And as soon as I started deactivating, and as soon as I had changed over to my IP addresses to unicast, all of my lag had gone away, and I didn't have any stuttering, and the sequences played smooth, and I've in the past 2 years never had trouble. So this here is definitely of some value to be able to activate and deactivate the channels. I went through and activated in 2018. I reactivated the channels I hadn't used, built those props, and added them this year. So. And subfolder save options. I want to go through and bring in xLights at this point, and I want to share with you in the setup tab the subfolders settings. So if you are not familiar with this, this is definitely a great point. There you can set dedicated locations for your show folders. So for me, I use this specific Dropbox location as my dedicated media directory. So all my MP3s are in one place in one computer. I've done this for all of my computers. I use Dropbox to save my my show onto. I run my show off of Dropbox. I'm pretty religious about taking care of my Dropbox and keeping it up to date. I don't muck around with SD cards or thumb drives or anything, and move files manually from one computer to another. So I always select one media drive, and this is one way to do it. You just literally click on this button here, and you can set your show directory to whatever it is that you need. The same with the FSEQ directory. You can have the FSEQs go to one specific location if you prefer. Some people may really appreciate this, because if you have a boot drive on your computer that is an SSD, and it's a small capacity SSD like 100 gigabytes or 120 gigabytes or something like that, and you have very limited space on your main SSD, maybe you have a backup storage drive that's 2 terabytes that's a mechanical drive that's much cheaper, much more meant for basic storage and so forth. You can move where you want your FSEQ directories to be, your backup directories to be, and also your alternative backup directory to be. So that's about the main secrets that I can tell you about the setup tab. The setup tab is very useful, but you don't once your layout is set up in universes and so forth are done. Basically, the next step is on to physically going in and to the layout tab. Again, it's really going to be hard for me to go through and do demonstrations of absolutely everything here. And so this is, if I were you, I would be writing, keep a little notepad right beside you. And if you have a question about any of the things that we go through, we can cover it in the Q&A, because this will get incredibly long if I do demos on absolutely everything. So a couple of the functionalities that we have in the layout tab. The first thing is the model icon row. And if you go across the model icon row in the layout tab, what you'll see is that we have these nice little drop downs. And if you hover over top of them, anytime you hover over them, there is these tooltips. Those tooltips are invaluable. In fact, as we go further, you're also going to see those tooltips if you go into the sequencing tab, that everything up on the main menu has a tooltip. So if you don't know what something is, you just need to hover over top of it, wait a moment or two, and it will be revealed to you what it is. It's just learning exactly what each one of those do. I use a lot of the icons in general, but this is one of the things that I wanted to share with you, was that tooltip. So if you didn't know that, that's always been one of my favorite additions that was brought in. So next we have the single, double, and triple click on models. And I can demo that for you pretty easy. Anytime that you single click, you can build a model. Anytime you double click, you can build a model, keep building the same model. It will do that for you. If you click 3 times, so 1, 2, 3, you just deselected, nothing's going to happen. So if you click it once, it'll build one model. Click it twice, it does endless models. Click it a third time, and it deactivates whatever model you had selected. You can also quickly add and delete things. Obviously, you saw me build those matrices really, really quick. You can click and drag to select, and then to delete something very quickly, you just hit the delete key on your keyboard, and it should go away. There we go. So now that you've seen that highlight and that delete keys, you can delete and so forth. Another option is anytime you're in you're in the setup tab, you can always quickly copy a model. All you have to do is physically select it, click on it, and hit the Control and the lowercase c button, which is your copy. And you can hit Control V, and it pastes one in the exact same place. So and I highly recommend whenever you're copying and pasting, copy the original, move the original, paste the second one, and it will paste in place where it's easier for you to drag and move it around. Then we have a couple or a number of right-click menus that are available, and I've taken the time. I know this looks a little boogered up, little extra data that you may not be interested in, but the right-click menu, there's a significant number. I think a lot of things get lost in the right-click menu because simply most people don't think to look there. But when we do go into the layout tab, into the right-click menu, we can create groups really quickly. So if we do go in and we select a group of models, if we've selected, like we have in this picture here, we've selected a group of models, we can hit the right-click button on the mouse and get to this specific menu. And you can see we have reset, we have bulk edit, which is probably one of the most powerful. You can reset a dimming curve, which is amazing. The ability to reset a dimming curve or set a dimming curve for multiple models is very powerful, to be able, instead of having to go through and do each model individually. If you have 100 models in your display, it's very tedious to do that on a one-by-one basis. However, if you use the dimming curves bulk edit, you can pretty much dim down your entire display to like 30% in a matter of seconds. You also have an alignment feature. I think I think this is probably the neatest my personal layout has ever been. I used a lot of alignment features in here. And the way you use the alignment is you would highlight all the models that you want to align, and you can see this one's not exactly off. You can right click and you can go to align, and you can align either whatever's selected here is what it's going to align the rest of them with. So you can align the top of it, you can align the bottom of it, and that's what we'll do. See how it kind of leveled it off right there. And then you can also do alignment. You can also do let's see, distribute, which is horizontal. If you had multiple, it's not going to really do much here. If you had like 6 of these, it would distribute them like nice and evenly. So for example, like the candy canes, I could distribute those very evenly if I wanted to, but that would be a lot of little clicking just to get to those little candy canes. So, but a lot of the right-click menu for the alignment, the distribute, and the resize, if you want your props to look a specific way, if you're very finicky about it being quote-unquote neat and pretty, then those are something that you probably want to go play with to make your layout look as nice as you can make it look. Also, I want to mention I never used a picture in my background ever. I've even gone into 3D, and I don't use a picture at all. I never have. A lot of people rely on their pictures. I know that 3D, you definitely have to rely on your model, but don't think that if you have a layout that's very basic and simple, you don't really need to rely on a picture in the background. But it helps if you're not used to doing it. So let's see. We have the resize. We have the let's go back over here to what I was going through before. We have the ability to create groups quickly. So whenever you click and drag over a set of models, you can right-click and you can go to Create Group, which is here. And when you create group, a dialog pops up. What would you like to name the group? And you give it a name, and it creates the group for you. You have the ability to select multiple models and lock and unlock those models by using the selection tool and then going to the lock or the unlock. So, for example, I made the point of showing you that you can align. You can also lock these models so that you can lock these models, and when you do, you see that they change red. This one here, you can't move it, but this one can be moved. I accidentally grabbed it, so if I don't want to accidentally grab it, all I have to do is I can go ahead and select all of those. I can actually select the whole thing, and I can right-click and I can lock everything in place. And now anything I touch is not going to move. So, moving back. Model distribute, model alignment, we talked about. Bulk edit of dimming curves, we talked about. Custom model, right-click menu. So going in and doing custom models, I know everybody has gone and picked up, most people have gone and picked up either wireframes, or they picked up Coro props and so forth. Over here is a example of that right-click, or of the custom model menu. Whenever you create a custom model, if you want some more options while you're in the custom model window, whenever you're working on that window, you can right-click over top of the build window when you're in there, and you get to this menu here, which is your flip horizontal, flip vertical, rotate 90, reverse, and shift. So back about a year or two ago, there was a button here that was flip model. And it became a little bit more complicated, so it actually got hidden on the right-click menu, and because there was so much more complexity than just clicking a button, I believe that Keith made it a little bit easier, so he added it to the right-click menu. So in order to flip a model, if you have a custom model and you ran the pixels the wrong way, or you build it by looking at the front view as opposed to the rear view, you can always flip the model. You can shift all the numbers in the model. If you started three nodes back further than you were supposed to, you can shift that model. You can also use some of the other functions for creating the custom model. You can shrink the space, make the model smaller by 10%, shrink it by 50%, or shrink it by 99%, which is a bug that we found and Scott fixed a couple weeks ago. that wasn't working very well with 3D. So that has been fixed as well, and that's pretty nice whenever you are making some really big, really large, complex custom models. So never forget that if you do need to flip a model, like especially the candy cane, I'll share with you the candy cane because that's the one that I think most people will have trouble with. If you select the candy cane and you go into edit model data and you select it and you really want it to flipped around, I'm going to go ahead and make this smaller, and you want it flipped around, you can flip it horizontally. If you have, like I do, two sets of candy canes, one here on the left and one here on the right, and they face different ways, that is definitely an option for you. So the wiring view and shift and reverse wiring order. So the that shift and reverse is very helpful if you did build your models backwards. Or you made it a little bit differently, you can always shift these around. Another nice feature is that you can look at the wiring diagram of any model just by being on the setup tab. And to view that, all you have to do is right-click on it, select a model, and then right-click, and you can view the wiring diagram. And there's a number of ways that you can use this to your advantage. This is your reverse view, so you're standing behind the prop and your audience is looking at it while you're standing behind it. And this is the way in my model that I created it. I made it one string. It's all one continuous strings, no splices or anything. But you can also change things, like you can make it lighter. You can change this so it's nice, so that when you go and print it, you can right click and you can send this to your printer. You can make this with large font. You can make this with the smaller font. And you can have also, so we have, it's auto set to the reverse view, but if you want to see it from the front view, you can click the front view, and here it's done, turned it around, and made it go in reverse. So this is the view looking at it from the side that the viewers get to see it. So there's a lot of nice little things hidden on the right-click menus whenever you are doing some certain things working through xLights as far as the setup tab goes. Layout tab, that is. The next part of the xEssentials is pretty. I want to say I want to try to make this as exciting as possible, but there's so much information and there's a lot of explaining, and I just want to hit on some of the main things. So if many of you are very aware of timings, and I want to point out that every timing that you have in your sequence has an option. If you go to the timings, you can right click on any of the timings that are up there. You can add a timing track from this screen now. Prior to this, you couldn't do that. It was only in the sequence setting dialog box, and I find it very much more useful. It's less moving with my mouse. It's just a little bit more simple to use. Whenever you can right click, you can go right over your timing grid and right click on that. And the functions that you have, you can add more timing tracks in. You can rename the timing tracks. You can delete timing. You can import timing tracks. This is a huge one. Being able to import timing tracks from any other xLights sequence, an LMS, which is Lightorama, an LSP. I can't remember all of the different functions, the different file types that you can go into. I think you can add a track from Audacity. If you create a label track from Audacity, I think that can come in still. So that's how you can use the import. You can export timing tracks as well. Many of you may be part of the Singing Faces initiative that's going on currently and started last year. And this is one of the ways that those timing tracks are brought in or taken out of the sequence that you're working on, so they can be easily shared with other people. If you're working on a sequence or if somebody's working on a sequence and they say, hey, do you have the timing track? Have you nailed out the timings for Wizards of Winter or Let It Go or whatever? And somebody says, sure, here's my timing track. So that way you don't have to waste your time doing it. You can always bring it in. And that's definitely a nice function. The import notes, the import note function is used with the piano effect. I think this is a hidden feature in xLights that many people may not use the piano effect. There's really not a whole lot on it, but Keith did do a release video on it when he revamped the entire effect probably 3 years ago. 2000, I want to say the end of 2015 or the beginning of 2016. He revamped it, and now it works very much like the Singing Faces, where it reads off of a note track and using the Queen Mary Vamp plugins to create a another specific track that's up here. So from here, you can also copy. Well, these are more into the actual later. We'll get into these ones in a little bit here. Next, we have the sequence tab and the effects manipulation. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to try to do a couple demonstrations. Whenever you're sequencing in xLights, there's a lot of ways to manipulate any of the sequencing or effects that are there. There's a lot of shortcuts, and it's hard for me to show you in a presentation how they work, but I'm going to attempt to do a couple click drags to select effects. I'm going to try to work through all of these here and kind of give you an idea. So one of the first things that you just saw as I zoomed in, I'm using a shortcut key that has been placed in xLights. It's the plus key on your keyboard. Now, most people are right-handed. I'm a left-handed person, and my right hand always sits on my number pad, and it's ready to hit that plus key anytime I'm zooming in on specific effects, anytime that I'm doing certain things. I like to zoom in, or I like to hit the minus key and that zooms out. So that's a functionality that I've gotten used to using. Another functionality while I'm in the sequence screen is whenever I want to go to the beginning of effects, I hit the shift key. Oh, I just hit stuck keys. Oops. I hit the shift key, and I can scroll my mouse wheel left and right, and I can kind of edge in. And if I'm in a certain location, I can select a specific model, and I can hit the control key, and I can zoom in right on it, or I can zoom way out. So, and it takes me, anytime I hold the control key, it takes me to where I've selected. Now, if I don't select an effect and I select an open timing mark, I can zoom out, and then I can zoom back into it. If I select something over here and I zoom out, it takes me right back to where it is. So that's a nice functionality as well. I think a lot of people don't know this. The control key, the shift key, and sometimes the alternate key are used in your xLights sequencing screen. And this is one way that you can get around rather easily and quickly in xLights. So I think I kind of jumped a little bit, but I wanted to do a couple click, drag, and select multiple effects. Basically, if we wanted to select multiple effects, this happens to be Scott Hansen's sequence from the Sedweller or the Cell Dweller, that Imperial March. And I don't know if I have a whole lot. There we go. These will work. So here we've got these effects. You can in order to select models a lot of time or effects, a lot of times it's easier to just deselect all timing marks. One of the things that you also know is whenever you're looking at a master view, you can only have one specific selected timing mark. You can't have two. Now, if you change your master view, this is something in xLights I know that they've looked at. Where's my all groups? All groups. Here we go. So this is my all groups. Another thing is if you have multiple timing marks here, to add a timing mark, you just click on the display elements and you grab your timings and slide them over. What you'll notice is that you can actually activate multiple timing marks. The only time that you can do this is when you're not in the master view, but as soon as you go back to the master view, it'll only let you, it shows 3, but as soon as you select one, they all disappear. So in the master view only, you can only select one. And so this is something that's confusing for people. I think that that they didn't really know that. That's another kind of a secret, that if you have 2 timing marks selected, it gets a little bit more challenging to figure out which one you're actually sequencing to. So if I have 2 selected, it's going after the one in blue, which is the top one. If I deselect the blue one, now what is it going to grab? It's going to grab what's in pink. So that would be the bars. So whatever's on top, that's the one that would be sequenced off of. Now I have one selected, and now it's working off of that one. So that was another little secret that you might not have known about. Is it super important? Not really, but if you ever wonder why you're trying to select only this one little square and you actually have like 5 or 6 of them highlighted, double check to see if you're in the master view, if you're not, and if you have more than multiple timings selected. That actually kind of got off track with another slide. But in any event, so we're going to do some selection of effects. It's best sometimes to select effects without a timing mark. Sometimes it's okay. Sometimes I find it's easier for me to, if I have beats and I only want to grab this first half, I like to manipulate the effects in ways that are very easy. So if we hold the shift key down, and you notice that only half of the effect is lit up here. If I hold the shift key down, I can extend. I'm holding, it's anchoring this side of the effect because it's not selected. It's anchoring this side, and I can extend this way. And I can kind of hone in onto, I can look up here and I can see, is this where I want it to be? And thanks to this nice little new addition, this little red line here that's across there, that kind of helps whenever I'm resizing my effects to exactly see where I want to put it. So that's kind of nice. If you select the whole effect, everything moves. If you select over half of the effect, everything will move. You don't have to have everything selected. There's multiple ways to select. Once again, if you have like a timing mark that is, where is the bars? Okay, where you grab here, this is going over 3 bars, and you grab here in the middle to grab all of them, and you want to move, you just want to move this side. No, the whole thing's been selected because you've hit the halfway point of the effect. So I hope that makes sense to everybody. So moving effects around, I believe that's next on the list. Chase and cascade, that's another thing. So in xLights, what we can do is we can, I'll go ahead and move over here and hit my beat track, and I'm going to use a shortcut key, the on effect. And now you can see we have the on effect here for, so what, it's on all house. I'm not worried about that. What I'm worried about is showing you the functionality of moving all of these effects to create a cascade. If you select everything and you hold the alternate button, I'm pushing the alternate button down now, and you move to the bottom right, you can do a simple chase, what we call a chase, but it's a cascade also. You can do a simple cascade by going left or right. If you do it from the top, it doesn't exactly work the same. And then remember, if you let go and you screwed up, you've always got Control-Z to undo your mistake in the sequence screen. So I find that very valuable. A lot of times I do a lot of neat little things, like with the AC side, I used to use that a lot. I also use the AC toolbar, which we'll get into later, and there is a cascade effect on there. I may not show that, but you can use any effect. Like the pinwheel, you could use the pinwheel effect, and you can cascade those using the AC toolbar as well. Keith has set that up as well. So, moving effects, you can move effects up, down, left, and right. You can, and we already talked about moving a half selected effect to extend or shorten. So you can take a hold of an effect and click on it with your arrow keys, and you can nudge it to the right, and you can nudge it to the left. Now obviously it's trying to re-render the effect every time you move it, and there's a lot going on in this one, so it is a little slow at this point. Now notice here, let me zoom in here. So to zoom in, again, I'm going to hold the control key and use the mouse. Notice that only half of the effect is selected, not the whole thing. If I have half an effect selected and I use my arrow key, it will extend out for me. If I'm just trying to get it perfect without having to grab the whole thing and edge it over and move it, or grab it in this manner, you can always select half the effect, move the arrow key in the direction that you want it to go. Now, if you can also obviously move these up and down. They can move into different rows and different layers. So that is there for you. All right, we're much further now than I ever thought we'd be. Next is the effects alignment, and this is particularly something that gets very confusing for folks. And I didn't finish my thought here. That's kind of funny. So when you're in the sequencing tab, you can right click after you've selected multiple effects. Whenever you do, you can create alignments. So what you can't see behind this picture is varied sizes of effects. Some are longer and some are shorter. And you can align them by start time. You can align them by end times. You can match the duration and center them. You can create a center point and not match the duration. You can shift alignment to the start and shift alignment to the end. You just need to first select all the effects on. You have to select all the effects first. Then you hold the Shift key down. You have to select, click, and drag, which I'm going to do the demo here for you because this is very helpful in a number of areas whenever you're sequencing. So if I have this effect here, this effect here, this effect here, this effect here. Okay, so let's say I want to align all of these together to this model here, or to this effect here. I can click and drag to select them all. I can actually get rid of the timing grid here. I have clicked and dragged. They're all selected. Whenever I hold the Shift key down, then I select the one that I want everything to align to. You click with your left mouse key. Now you let go of your Shift key, and you right click, and your alignment will allow you now to do whatever it is that you'd like to do. So if you want to shift align the end times, if you want them to align to this end time, you can do that. And there you've aligned everything to that end time. If these are varied different sizes, you can do different things with those. I'll do another one real quick. Let's say I want to center everything on this one here. So I've clicked and dragged. I held the Shift key down and I clicked on this middle one here. Now I right click, alignment, and hit center points, and that centers it and makes everything kind of go like that. So once again, that's a function I use a whole lot in my sequencing. So as I said, the start, center, and start point, center point, and end effect is moved, so the whole effect moves. The alignment both resizes and centers. The match duration adjusts the length to match, so all of the effects are changed. In these two, the effects are changed here. And then in this last one, start and end times are justified left or right whenever you align start and end times. So no changes made to the effect. So just keep in mind, and you do have to play with these to get to know the ones that you like and use the best. Movement on the grid. I think I already kind of started going through these. Shift plus the mouse is your scroll left and right. Control plus the mouse is your zoom in and out. I think I did show you that, where you can control zoom in and out, where you can select an effect. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I did show you that. So if you zoom in, whatever you select is where it zooms in on. I could be over here. I could be over here and slide down here, and as soon as I hit the control key plus the zoom, it's going to take me back to what I've selected. We have the page up and page down keys, and I already talked about the plus and minus for the zoom. The page up and page down is wonderful. It reminds me of Excel. So if you're in your sequence, you can always hit the page up and the page down, and you can go up through your model lists and find things rather quickly. I have a ridiculous number of models, so this is definitely something very helpful. Another one that, and I'm proud to say that I learned this one today thanks to Keith, and one that I'm actually going to start using here in the near future, because using the arrow, oops, I'm sorry. Oops. How did I get way back there? There we go. Is control plus the period, or the control plus period and control plus slash. These two functions, this saves your sequence location and then allows you to quickly return to where you were. So we're going to start where, let's say we're going to take an effect that we have, let's say I'm working on this sequence and I found the sequence effects here that I like. I want to paste some effects to this specific model. Let's say I'll display. I want to copy them from somewhere. What you have to do is you have to set this location by hitting the control plus the period. and that sets the current view, the current frame or screen that you see. So control period has just saved it. Now I can scroll up and I can find whatever it is that I want to find, and I can select whatever it is that I want. I can hit Control C to copy, and then to go back to the previous screen without scrolling up and down or page up and page down, all I have to hit is Control and slash, and it takes me back to where I was. This is exactly where I was, and then I can go ahead and paste my effect, Control V. So I find that very helpful. Now, something I didn't put on the slides, and I want to add in real quick for you, is another quick tab way of working horizontally through your sequence. Whenever you have the beginning of your song, let's say you're at the beginning of your song and you have an intro, and you know the intro is the first 10 seconds of the song, you can right-click and you can set a tag that allows you to quickly recall that part of the sequence. And as you go through, you can mark up your sequence with, okay, here's the end of the first verse, the beginning of the first chorus. You can right-click up here on the timing grid here and set it. And then whenever you get to like a chorus, the end of the chorus, you can right-click and you can add another tag. Now let's say you get to the second chorus here, or the second verse, and the second verse is similar to the first, and you want to quickly go back to that first one. You just hit the control key down and hit the tag number that you laid down up here for that first one, and you can hit the number 1, and ding, it takes you right back there to that number 1 tag. If you need to go back to the beginning, hit or to before it, where the end of the intro is, you can hit Control 0, and that takes you back to the beginning. So this addition allows you to quickly jump between different screens that you might be working on without having to move the preview that you're looking at. And that's very helpful as well. Next, we'll move on. We have some right-click modes in the Sequence tab. We have some insert layer options. If you are looking at the model screen here, this would be the models that you have listed. You can right-click on those models, and this is your list of options that are available. You can insert layer above. You can insert layer below, insert multiple layers. You can toggle strands. Toggle strands is an interesting effect which basically opens up the model to the strand level. So if you have a megatree and you have 10 strands in your megatree, or 12 strands, it opens you up to the individual strand view. And if you want to sequence at that level, you certainly can. One of my favorite features is collapse all layers or collapse all models. And I'll show you quickly what that does. So notice I have all of these layers open in my megatree or my matrix or whatever. I can right-click and I can collapse all models, and I can right-click and collapse all layers. So now that just made it a little bit more easy to navigate up and down. There's only one line versus going in and having the expanded view. Now conversely, you can expand all your layers, or you can do what we call show all effects. If you click show all effects, this expands everything to the larger view and opens it up. So if you're looking for something specific, you're able to find where you might have sequenced something and it's hidden in a layer otherwise not known because you've collapsed all your layers. So that's a little bit of navigation from there. Also, whenever you're on the row or model, you have a few interesting right clicks that are available for models that have multiple layers, where you can copy the entire line. You can copy the entire row, or you can copy the whole model, and you're able to create that copy. You're able to paste it onto another model. You're able to just select all the effects. Maybe you need to slightly change them a hair. Maybe you need to. You certainly can do that. We can expand, like here. We can right click and we can go to model and we can select all effects. Now everything's selected. Now if I hold the shift key down and I think, is it shift key? No, that's not it. Model. Let's do select effects. If we just hit the arrow key, nope. I know there's a way to do this. Right click. See, I never confess to knowing everything about xLights, but I'm always willing to learn something. So if I want to select effects and I hold the control key, maybe I can hit the little arrow key and these will move. If not, then I can always go back to my standby, select effects, and I can come out here, hold my shift key down, and I can move all my effects. So that's moving everything. Not particularly useful unless you know everything's slightly off. So I'm going to hit a Control Z, and we'll get that out of the way. Another thing that doesn't get talked about very much, if ever, is you can export. And I find this very helpful whenever I'm sequencing. If I like an effect, sometimes I like to export the effect and create a what's known as an AVI. You can export this entire model as an effect, and you can create it as a number of different file formats. An LOR clipboard file. You can create a number of different file exports. These are just ways for you to copy and paste into like Lightorama for this, for example. But you can also export to Lightshow Pro this entire thing. This may be not for the audience that's watching. I think that the best use of this though is to have to let me cancel out of here and do this the other way. We can. I don't know if I rendered this sequence, so this might slow us down. If we hit the export button here, we should be able to. And I don't see it. So I'm sorry, I've got this kind of messed up in a way that I'm thinking one thing and not doing it in another.
Clyde, real quick, you haven't rendered it. That's
yeah,
why some of the features are not.
Well, that's I did not render it. Yeah. Let me go ahead and render it. This might take a little bit. Hang-ups on All House. Anytime you have a lot of groups and you do a lot of sequencing at a all group level, there's going to be hang-ups. But that still should show the output. So we're at about 50 minutes now. Okay, let's see if we can export this the way that I think we should be able to export it now. Should be able to export as a compressed or an uncompressed AVI file. So I'm going to go ahead and skip that for now. We'll probably do a tips and tricks video later on that. But in any event, you can export a individual model and be able to utilize that in other sequence models or sequence programs. Next, we'll go into the file menu. Now the file menu, what I mean by the file menu is the menu that is listed at the very top of the screen where it first starts out as files. So these are all drop downs that if you click on them, and I'm only going to hit probably the most important ones, or the ones that I find are most helpful for everybody. There really isn't too much secrets in these ones that I go through now, but I think they're important to talk about the ones that are not talked about. So recently, if you can go, a lot of folks can go through. If you are an LOR convert, you have converted your sequence into an LOR. You've exported it or converted it into an LOR format. That's what the convert is for. The generate custom model, and there is a video on this that was done by Keith that allows you to build your very own custom model, custom wireframe, a custom whatever, something that you can't just go get in the download section or somebody else has made it. It's something that you made that only works in your display. Nobody else has it. You can create a simple video and upload it into xLights, and xLights can read that video and create and generate a custom model for you. And this is a great example was last year at the expo, watching James from Boscoyo build a number of his props and so forth that they actually did. They shot at live time and did a lot of the model building using the generate custom model. Then we have check sequence. That's probably the most important thing in the tools down here in the tools menu. if you go through the tools menu and you use the check sequence, my gosh, there's a lot of information in the check sequence that if you've never ran it, if you're having issues rendering, or if you're having issues with just in general, run a check sequence and it will help you. If it doesn't help you personally, it can help other people who are trying to help you be able to pull information and data from the sequence or from xLights just in general. We did a video very recently on the 2D path editor. I posted that in the xLights group. I believe the prepare audio is a new function that Keith added in. That's what it's called. It allows you to take a piece of audio that you have cut through, I'd say, what was the name of that program? It was used for The Greatest Showman last year, and now xLights can read that file and cut the audio the exact same way. It may not be able to do the fades, but it can do the cuts and make the same kind of audio without having to buy a bunch of gear. xLights will do the work for you if that person has used, and I apologize, I don't remember the name of that program. So check sequence, we talked about that. Clean up file locations. This is something that will help you kind of organize things a little bit better. There is a video on the clean up file locations that Keith did. I think this is about a year or two ago. View logs. View logs is definitely another important functionality in xLights. If you're having issues with a certain effect not rendering or a certain effect not doing something, or at least you think it isn't, you can click on view log, or you can also package the log if one of the developers asks you to do so. Him having trouble in the sequence XYZ isn't working, and hey, did you look at your log? And actually did this a couple weeks ago, and Keith said, well, did you look at your log? And I said, no. And so I had the chance to learn what the log file was for, and what I was able to discriminate was that there was a problem that I was creating, and I was able to identify it really quick, and it was very helpful because I had that log file. Batch render, I think that's kind of very well known by now. If you have a number of sequences and you're going to run a show, when we render a sequence, it creates an FSEQ file. The batch render will render any of the selected sequences that you want rendered. It will sit there and it will do it in the background of running your computer. Sometimes it'll prompt you if you need to make changes to the sequence, if you've made changes since, if you deleted models and so forth. It needs to know what to do with that data. But after you've gone through that process, the batch render is a very valuable tool, and I highly recommend using it. It's found, once again, it's in the tools menu here. xSchedule, obviously, this is exactly where you can go to activate the xSchedule. And then we have download sequences and lyrics. And for those of you who are in the Singing Faces group, or those of you who aren't and would like to be, now's the time to get in. I believe Ed's taking, Ed and Carl are still taking people up until the end of the month, or I'm not sure the dates. But this is where you would go to download those lyric tracks, and also the download sequences. That's where you go and download the sequences off of the share drive. So those are all there. There's a number of other small functions in here that I think the other one that I didn't mention is the user lyric dictionary. You can, if you're sequencing with the Singing Faces group and you find a word doesn't convert for you, you can add it to the user dictionary. And I believe Tom Langley, he made a video on how to do that, so that video is available as well. I didn't say anything about the edit dropdown, and I didn't say anything about the file dropdown. Suffice to say, the edit menu has shift effects and shift selected effects, and I will do a small demo on that. So if you go into the edit menu, and let's say you've purchased a sequence from somebody, and the audio that you have doesn't match up identically with the audio that was sequenced to it by that original person, or if somebody shared a sequence with you and you already have the audio that you like and you want to shift the effects, you can shift those effects to match up better by clicking on Shift Effects. You can also use Shift Selected Effects, which, once again, where I was trying to move these effects before, you can shift the selected effects edit, shift selected effects, and this works in milliseconds. So if we want to move them like 50 milliseconds, we can see how far that is. It's a very small movement. So it was very, very micro movement that was done there. If you're trying to really get something on with the beat that maybe that you can't do manually, or it's hard for you to grab a hold and move. So I do find that a very useful thing. Many people, and I hate to bring, I'm not trying to bring up Lightorama, but many people always ask, how do you skew the track? Skew the track was the function in LOR. We call it shift effects, and it actually moves the effects. It doesn't move the MP3, so it's really nice to have that functionality. Okay, continuing with the file menu, we're going to go into the view, which is the windows in perspective. There's the zoom in and the zoom out you see there. We already know that we can do that with the plus and minus keys. You can reset your toolbars. It's very nice. Many people who sequence in xLights have multiple screens. I have a screen that's up here to the north, and I have a screen that's over here to the west. And sometimes we take our little boxes and we put them in different places to make it easier for us to sequence. But what happens if you're using multiple computers to sequence off of? And what happens is, if you happen to go into your layout and you save this layout and you accidentally leave it, in this manner, and you've accidentally gone over to your perspectives and you've saved your perspectives this way, how do you get it back if you go to a laptop? And that's very simple. You can just go to the views and you can reset your toolbars. Well, that would be the toolbars up here. I'm sorry. This part, we're moving all these bars. One of the things I really love the most about xLights is this perspectives box, which is under this views menu, the perspectives and the windows, which is what I wanted to get into. The perspectives allows us to save a setup for yourself. I have a number of different setups. I had 2 screens at one time. I had a main desktop layout. I had 3 monitor layout. I had this was the show computer with 1 single monitor. This was the 2 monitors in the show. This was my new desktop. This was, I had different computers that I was running these off of, and I liked different layouts. So I was able to quickly change between different layouts and have different previews on my screen. If I had, this wouldn't be set up exactly the same way if I did this with this one here. So that just changed. You can't tell, but that just drastically changed my other screens. And it's very helpful to set these up and to learn more about perspectives, because there are certainly functionalities that you can go to change real quickly. I hear music. Hit play. There we go. All right, so we're at about 1 hour. I hope none of you had to grab yourself a cup of coffee. I'd say we're probably 3/4 through all of the material that I wanted to share. But as in these drop-down menus, in the perspectives, that was the main thing I wanted to show, was the perspectives, is learning more about perspectives. I've done a detailed video on Leechburg Lights YouTube page about perspectives and groups and views. If you search for that, you'll learn a lot more about it. You can reset the toolbars. Let's say these toolbars, you can move. They can move around. That's one of the things many people don't know, is you can put your effects toolbar here. Some people find it easier here. If you're right-handed, maybe the effects toolbar makes more sense to put on the right-hand side here. And if you're right-handed, it's easier for you to go from here over to here, here over to here, instead of going to the top. You can also do the same thing with the AC toolbar. Some people like to have those at the bottom. And some people like to have it on the other side, and so forth. Let's go try that reset. So I'll look silly. See if I reset that. Reset toolbars. Okay, so reset toolbars happens whenever you close and then open up xLights. So let's go back down here. For the perspectives, you can always reset your perspectives back to the default setting. One of the things you'll notice here is default perspectives. If you double click on default, I like to save this default. This is how xLights usually looks whenever it's installed on a brand new computer, except I put my layer setting box over here and I saved it, so I apologize. But the physical menu, the perspectives menu, you can come over here and use this to set it with. If your perspective box happens to be closed, you can get to that menu through this view menu right here. And you can change it to whichever one is your default or one that works best for you. So, Windows shortcut menu clicks to sequence dialog box. So, shortcut menu clicks to sequencing dialog boxes, display elements. There are, in this drop-down box, in perspectives, we talked about it, but if we go down to the Windows part, we click on the Windows, we have a much bigger menu. We can physically open up all of the dialogues that that you see opened on the screen here. So if we have these opened up in this manner here, we can go to Windows, and we can physically open up different boxes that aren't on the screen. Like here's the jukebox, it just opened it for us. This is where you go to find them. If you don't know where to find a box, or like here's the colors, the color palettes right here. If you don't know where your where some of your boxes are, let's see, Effects Assist. That's one that I always look for, Effect Assist. Let's see, Effects Settings. Effects Assist right there. So right here is the Effects Assist. It just popped it up. I use this a lot in my sequencing. There we go. So you can use this dialog here to go open or close any of the boxes that you're looking for. The perspectives, you can dock everything. That's another nice functionality. If I happen to be into this setup right here where everything's all crazy to me right now and I need to dock it all, I can move this out of my way and I can go to View, Windows, Dock Everything, and it brings everything that was somewhere else on another screen here. So I think that's a very powerful one too. If you've got things spread out on different monitors and you move to a computer that only has one monitor, you can use the dock all function, and that definitely will help you. Moving on, so this is the Zoom portion of the presentation. Anytime you're in xLights and you're sharing your screen, it's very important to always go to audio and change it to very quiet, because every time that you change your audio settings, Zoom automatically maximizes its audio, and if you are sharing your screen and you share audio with your screen, people who have headphones on will be suddenly surprised by the loud noise that they hear whenever you hit the play button to show your sequence, because it will be blaring. So I'm petitioning Keith right now to have this changed from quiet, loud, medium, quiet to Zoom level quiet. And maybe he will do that, maybe he won't. But also the other functionalities here in the audio tab are you can play at full speed, which is your normal speed whenever you're playing your music. So I don't think I'm sharing with sound, not that it matters, but you can change to a faster speed if you want to see the preview of the display as you're watching the display, and you want to see it just go through it faster. You don't have 5 minutes that you want to watch the entire 5-minute song, but you want to watch the whole thing. You can see it at a faster pace, and it's kind of helpful. If you're really trying to work on different areas of the song, you can slow the sequence down to 3/4 of the speed, and now you have this much slower version of the sequence. And if you're really trying to zoom in and hone in on a specific timing, that will help you as well. Okay, so next is the settings drop down. This is the mother of all menus. And whenever I say the mother of all menus, I really truly mean it. I mean, xLights has so many functionalities and so many options in it. It's absolutely ridiculous. You will make your head go crazy spinning trying to learn what everything is available in xLights. And one of the things I could recommend is going in and spending some time yourself personally looking at and playing with some of these sequence settings that are here available to you. One of the questions that gets asked a lot is how do I change the time in my sequence? Like I started with 40 frames per second, but the sequence is getting so big and it's tough to render. It takes longer to render, and it's throwing more frames per second than I need. Can I get rid of that and make it a 20 frames per second? And you certainly can. If you go to your sequence settings, you just click this little check mark here, and now you can change it to whatever it is. Are you sure you want to modify the timing? You click yes, and you can change this from 50 frames to well, I'm at 50. It's usually, this would be 25 if it were smaller or shorter. So that's one way to do it. Another thing that, while we're on this screen here, is model blending, and I've already done a video personally on this. It's on the xLights group. You can go search for it. But model blending is something that is a sequence setting. And you can see here that it's not checked, and it's saved in this manner because I have unselected or deselected it. Now, whenever we go back in and we look at the functions here, the drop downs here, there is actually a mode here in the drop down that says where is it at? Snap to model blending default off. You can automatically make it so that in your model blending, whenever you create a new sequence, model blending is unchecked. And this is usually the way I go. There's a very, very few sequences that I've ever made that I like model blending turned on, but that's a personal thing. So just know that model blending is a sequence setting, and that's why it fits under the settings drop down. So here, we'll go ahead and continue. We have render on save, or save SFEQ on file on save. If a lot of times during the year when we're sequencing, it's January, February, March, April, May, we don't need to render an FSEQ ever unless we're doing a special event. So I typically turn these off. I usually don't like to render an FSEQ. There's no reason to. The only reason why you would need that is if you need the file to output to your lights. You need to create that for the X scheduler, or you need to run that for FPP. And by all means, during the holidays, you want to turn this on. If you make changes, sometimes people forget, you want to save the SF. Every time you hit the save button, it will create that FSEQ for you. Backup on launch and backup on save. These are nice functions. I'm a data hog. I never like to delete any files. So what I end up doing is I back up every time I launch xLights. So whatever directory by default is there that I open to is going to create a backup for me, and it's going to go into my backup folder in my xLights directory. So I really appreciate this. Now, there's another functionality in xLights that's not in this menu, and a lot of people really don't know about it. I believe if we go to File, we can have an alternate backup, and you can designate, like as I said before in the Setup tab, you can, under this box here, you can designate where your alternate backup directory is. I manually do this. I guess I could select a specific location, but all you would do is hit enable. You'd find a place on your computer where you want to save it. That would be exactly where your alternate backup is, and you click OK, and then go back into your sequencer. You just click on this and alternate backup. So now all of the files that are 30 megabytes in my sequence directory are going to get backed up, and they're going to go into this computer's location wherever I just set it to be. So not only after opening this program did I create a backup, but I also just created a backup of my backup in a different location. So if I lose data on, let's say I lose my Dropbox, it completely crashes and I can't recover the data. Well, guess what? It's now on my hard drive here in this computer locally. So it's always good to have more storage options and backup options. Exclude presets and audio from package sequences. So as somebody who sells sequences, I can tell you that this to me is very valuable, because I spend a lot of time making presets and using them in my sequences. If you share sequences, I highly recommend excluding your audio. You're welcome to share your presets, but your audio, you really, after looking into the music industry and seeing how they do things, I mean, they really do go after people who or share music and so forth. So I typically do not like to share any of my audio. So that's nice. When you hit package sequence in the tools file, when you package the sequence, your audio won't go. along with the sequence. So I always recommend that to not be there. One of the things that helps you if you do share your sequences with other people, one of the things that will help you is if you go into the settings, and this is probably a tip that many people don't know. Underneath the sequence settings, underneath of the metadata, you can come in here and you can physically type in the music LOR where you got the MP3 from. You can type the website. You can type an email address or whatever. You have metadata that you can share with people, and it's in the XML data file. So if this is definitely, if you're in the Singing Faces group, you absolutely have to use this because the MP3s don't get sent out with the individual lyric tracks. Okay, flying right along. Color Manager. Okay, if you are there's a lot of things that I'm going to kind of skip over. The Color Manager and is, in my opinion, one of the nicest functionalities in the settings menu, because if you're like me and have a hard time seeing some of these dark colors, like the blue on black, if you have black here, like zoomed out, it doesn't look so bad. You can kind of see it, but whenever you zoom in, it's really hard to see exactly where these where those blue lines are. So what you can do with your settings, you can go into the Color Manager and you can change that color. See that timing, your timing tracks are here, your effect grid, those colors are customizable, as well as in your layout tab, you can change colors here as well. If that dark blue doesn't suit you very well, you can change it to a nice pastel color, an orange. And you can see live time, it just changed. That's a very helpful tool. If you have challenges seeing and you can't see that dark color very well, then by all means you can go in here. There's also functionalities. You can import color profiles from one instance of xLights into another instance if you have multiple files on your computer. That way you don't have to keep recreating them over and again. The timing double click mode. This is if you're into the Singing Faces, timing double click is very, very useful when you are trying to work out words in a specific music or phrase. I like the pink, that looks really good, but the green's kind of there. Okay, so if you're working within here, and if you're doing some lyric track work in here, and you've got your tag here for whatever word you're working on, double clicking plays it, or if you hold the Shift key, you can double click and it opens up the tag, so you can go in and type your lyrics in here, and it's nice because now you have two functionalities that exist under one. This is very convenient and very slick to be able to double click and play something, or double click this timing, you can play this whole phrase here. And then you can also go in, double click and hold the Shift key down, and you're able to edit that tag as well. So that's a nice functionality that's perfect for Singing Faces and so forth. Your Effects Assist window. If many of you use the morph effect, I find this is very useful. You can set the Effects Assist window, which I believe the Effects Assist only works with the morph effect and the picture effect. And when you lay those effects down, you can have xLights preset to auto toggle. And I've got to find it. I always have a hard time. This is the timing double click mode. You can have it play timing, or you can reverse it. If you double click, it will edit the text. If you hold the Shift key, it will play it for you. You can just change that mode. So that's what that is. Effect Assist window. I use toggle mode. So my Effects Assist window will always show up on toggle mode whenever I lay the morph effect down. So there's the morph effect. That's the house preview. Where to go? I need to go to Tools, View, Windows, Dock All. There it is. There's my Effects Assist. So if I'm working within the sequence, and here's my Effects Assist window. As soon as I delete it and I put a different effect down, it should go away if I change this setting to toggle mode. So now here, see, I hit that on effect, and because the on effect isn't relevant to the Effects Assist, it goes away. If I hit the morph, here it comes back. If I hit the other effect, it goes away. If I hit the picture effect is a shortcut key, the effect assist window comes back. So that's what's nice about sequencing. Makes it quick once you know how that works physically. I usually leave it on toggle. You can have the effect assist always on, or you can have it always off and just call it up simply by bringing it up in the View tab going to your windows. So play controls on preview. If you like to look at the preview, you can also set the play controls to be play or show preview on play of the sequence. You have, and that's the auto show house preview. So if you hit the play button, you can automatically show the preview as opposed to having to have the screen open and using the play controls on the preview. Autosave is awesome. Autosave creates a automatic backup of your sequence while you're sequencing. I typically like, whenever I'm working on much larger displays, I like to have that set at, where is it at? Autosave. I like to have it set at 3 minutes. When I'm working the larger displays, I usually set it to every 10 minutes. 15 or 30 minutes. When you're working with a really, really big sequence and you get hit every 3 minutes with an autosave and it slows you down by like 30 seconds, you're like, oh my God, why is xLights doing this? And you kind of get mad, but then you're like, okay, at least it's backing it up for me and I don't have to think about it. So your backups get saved in your xLights directory. They're called a XBKP file. They're identical. Unless you didn't, and whenever you see an autosave, if you hit save on your keyboard, then your XBKP file is the same as your .xml file. Model blend default off. I already talked about that. Snap to timing marks. Using the snap to timing marks automatically, whenever you place the effect on the grid, it snaps it close to the timing marks that you're closest to. I like to use it in some instances, but most of the time I leave it deactivated. And most recently, the FSEQ version. Right now, we're having a bit of compatibility issues. Well, xLights is got 2 FSEQ versions that are available to be exported. Some people are still using the version 1 of FPP, and some people are using version 2 FPP, and that's what this is for. So if you're using FPP, then you want to check and see which version you're using, and then set the version here to make sure that you output to the right or correct to the correct FSEQ that you're going to send to that unit. So in some instances, you may have to re-render the sequence twice if you're not going to update one of your Falcon Pipe layers. Okay, so probably the very most helpful menu ever created in xLights is the help menu. And I think this is a highly underrated menu in general. And the reason being is because there's so much information that if you just spent 10 minutes looking at everything that's available here, you'll find that you really don't have to save a lot of links in your web browsers. You don't have to look for a lot of information inside your computer's directory. A lot of stuff is hot linked right here. So first of all, to get into this Zoom room that we're in, you literally only need to go to help and click Zoom, and it takes you right to this Zoom room. You don't have to leave xLights. I find that incredibly helpful and easy. So if you literally need help, there usually is like 10 people in this room at any given time. So I think that's kind of cool that that functionality is here. The key bindings file. So I've done a number of videos personally on the key bindings. Keith last year released a significant addition to the key bindings. Any key binding that you ever wanted for any one of the menus, I just went ahead and I didn't mean to. Any one of the key bindings would have that you ever imagined has been created for the setup tab, the layout tab, and the sequence tab. And what I want to show you is right here. If you go to help and you hit key bindings, this brings up this this key bindings information. Now I've got a monitor up here. I can extend this and I can make this really long. Well, no, I guess you can't. I thought you could. But you've got a scroll bar here, and I have a significant number of preset effects on a shortcut key that I have built for my key bindings. If I ever forget which one is the fan effect, I can look here, Shift plus F is for the fan effect. My wave effect is on Shift W. The strobe effect is on Shift plus S, or B, that is. And we're starting to run out of letters in the alphabet. If you hadn't noticed, there's 47 effects in xLights now, and there's only 52 letters in the alphabet, Keith, so I hope you better have a couple new ideas coming. Next, we'll go into from the key bindings. We have the content. These are tips for current tool tabs, or the current tabs that we're in. So if you are in the help screen and you want to know what content you're looking at, you go here and literally hit the help button and it'll tell you what content you're looking at. You're looking at the sequencer tab. Here's about the sequencer tab. If you're in the layout tab and you hit help, you're in the layout tab, create elements, by clicking here. So this is another kind of for newbie things. You can learn more about reading those tabs as well. The forums, xLights forums on the xLights website. You can literally have a link to go to the forums. Video tutorials. I love seeing this because this takes you all of the videos on videos.xlights.org. You don't have to memorize what the ULR is. Download new xLights versions. So there's a number of times that you open xLights, and I leave xLights run on this computer for days at a time, and I don't get that notification by opening xLights saying, oh, by the way, there's a new release of xLights. I can go here and I can click download. I can also check for updates. That's another functionality. Then one of my favorites is the release notes. I talked about this very early in the course of the evening, and I absolutely have to say, if you are not utilizing or looking at the release notes to see exactly what's going on in xLights, you're really missing a lot of interesting things. So this here is a compiled list of over hundreds, literally hundreds, maybe even 1,000 or more commits to xLights, to the xLights program, going back. This is 4.2.5. This is the whole way through the life of the program. And then when you get to the end of xLights 4, the very beginning here, it was March 20th was xLights' birthday. So, or is xLights' birthday. We have xLights 3.0 and all of the work that was put into the xLights 3.0 program from February 22nd, which would be xLights 3's birthday, coming up here in the next couple days. So with that being said, let's go ahead and, one more thing, the About tab. The About is perfect for giving you the version number and licensing info if you want to know more about the licensings of xLights, but the version number is there, and if you're using a non-current version, it's always good to know what version of xLights you're running. After you open a sequence, the version starts out up here, but when you open a sequence and you've rendered it and you save it a couple times, that version number disappears. So to know what version you're at, you just click Help and About, and it tells you right here. So that's some people always ask, well, where do you find the version number? And I think that's something that most people don't know about. This moves us into the icon menu, and the last few things that I want to talk about are the icons. Now, I'm not going to go through every icon, but I will say that once again, there is the tooltip that if you hover over any of these icons, that you have three main toolbars. You have the AC toolbar, you have the effects icons, and you have the main functions of xLights toolbars. So if I go down here, let's go back to the sequence tab, and I want to move this back up here so you can see it. There we go. So one of the functionalities that I love is the fact that you can hover over anything here in the xLights program. Select an effect there. Not exactly sure what's doing there. So, but in any event, you can hover over any of the, and I don't know why it's grayed out. Oh, that's because I have the AC toolbar effect or activated. You can hover over any of these and you'll get your tooltips to tell you what they are. The most common ones for your save, open, save as, and render are here. These two timing, paste by cell, paste by timing, are pretty self-explanatory. Your play controls are here. This is like all kind of basic stuff. But one of the things that I do like is that you can turn on and turn off some of these boxes that you see simply by clicking on the icons here. So this is for your effects settings. That can get that out of your way, but you usually use the effects settings with every effect, so it doesn't, I don't find this very useful. This is your color palette box. You can make it go away. This is your layer setting box, which would be this box here. You can make it go away. Your layers blending box, your model preview, and your house preview. And then this one here is your display elements. We used to tell people right click display elements and then this box would show up. But if you select this here, that toggles your display elements box as well. So I use that very, very frequently. I'm surprised by how much I actually use it. And the effects, I mean, I certainly can't go through here and do all the effects. I'm not going to go through and make an effect video. That's not what we're here for. The AC toolbar, there is a very good video that Keith has put out if you want to learn more about the AC toolbar. One thing I did promise is I was going to show you how to use the cascade in the AC toolbar. We'll go ahead and lay down some pinwheels here. Oh, picture effect. I don't know why I hit the picture effect instead of pinwheels. There we go. And you can activate the AC toolbar after you've selected everything there. You can highlight and you can select the cascade tool, and you can click and drag out where you want it to cascade from, and it should cascade for you. That's a very nice function. I think it even works backwards. We can go backwards here. And there you go. So that's a nice functionality. So the AC toolbar does work with standard effects. And to go back to normal mode, you hit the AC button. Okay, we're going to start wrapping it up. I know this is probably around an hour and 30 minutes, so I knocked off a good hour off of the original presentation, which was 2.5 hours. So if you're still awake and you're still listening, I hope you're getting something out of this. I think one of the last things I want to talk about is Jukebox and Xfade. Jukebox is obviously in the Windows menu. You can always open up Jukebox. It's not very relevant when you're sequencing on a daily basis, but you can always go in, open up the Jukebox, and you can right-click and assign in the Jukebox screen. You can right-click and assign a specific effect to fire off in Jukebox mode. And Jukebox is particularly interesting and helpful whenever you're trying to program something live and output live to a live audience. Let's say you have a stage crew or something to that effect. Jukebox is really interesting because you can take all of the effects that are assigned at a specific time. It captures that sequencing, and whenever you hit that button for that selected effect, it will activate all the effects that are in that period of time. And you can do that throughout the sequence and find specific areas of time that you really like the sequencing for and assign them to each individual button. Now, what xFade is xFade is actually accessed through your xLights install directory. So you have to go into your directory to open up xFade. But once you open up xFade, you can click the connect to xLights, and the I didn't show you. There's a way to set which xLights you're using, because you can have multiple instances of xLights open. If you have 2 instances of xLights open, you can use that xFade program. And if we go to settings, where is it at? xFade, and we can assign, like this version is assigned to port A. If you open a second instance of xLights, you can assign it to port B. So when you're in xFade, this is port B and this is port A. You'd have both your sequences open that are regarding this specific port, and then xLights would connect to this one. You would have to go in and you do some configuration with your E131 channels to make it look like your current display. And what xFade does is it takes this version of xLights and this version of xLights. It uses the jukebox functions that are there and allows you to create live time fades and sequencing, you can fade between one set of jukebox preset effects to in one sequence to another set of jukebox presets effects. So this is a very interesting function, and it was definitely due some attention here in this video, and I hope I opened your eyes to a little bit of it because I learned a lot about it myself. So finally, to kind of start wrapping this up, where do you find even more secrets? And the honest to God truth is you can go to Keith Wesley's YouTube page. He is the head developer for xLights. You can also go to Gil Jones. He has a number of videos on his YouTube page. I've done a number of videos for Leechburg Lights. Some of them are becoming a little dated, but most of them are still very quality content. And recently, I asked that you keep your eyes open in the official xLights group. I've been doing a number of videos there that you'll see filter in on every other day or so. That recently I have, but usually I'll probably get that down to about once a week with some good videos. Finally, videos.xlights.org. Everything that you see in Keith's channel, and most everything I believe that Gil has done has been added into the videos.xlights.org. A number of my videos here from Leechburg Lights has been added as well. And also the other thing I can say is a number of other creators and YouTubers have put their content that they've created here as well. I'm not saying this is an exhaustive list. There's a significant number of other people who've made videos. Steve Jerome is one of those who's made some videos and does a good job at it as well. I would recommend that you would check out his page as well. Also, finally, double check the release notes. Anytime you want to learn something, I can't iterate that enough. Just combined in these 4 channels, there's, well, in the 3 channels here, there's well over 200 videos probably or more that you can find information on xLights, how to use the program, and that's not counting the ones that I haven't looked. And most of the videos are broken down into here. Some of them may not be here. I'm pretty sure most of mine I've merged over to there. Finally, the last thing I want to bring up is something that Keith brought to my attention. He says, well, hey, you remember when we did the 100 tips of the day? And so a year and a half ago, Keith was challenged with creating a brand new xLights tip every day. And I would welcome everybody to go to the Aussie Christmas Lighting Forum and search for xLights tip of the day. If you go to the Aussie Christmas Lighting Forum, you sign up and you literally type these words, you'll get to this thread, you'll get to this download. And it is chock full of great, interesting tips to show you about the program and how things work. So I appreciate everybody listening through everything, and I am interested to hear what people, if you're still awake, that is, what kind of questions you have, because I'm happy to answer any questions that you do have.
I want to thank you, Clyde, extremely much. Learned quite a lot tonight. For those that might be unfamiliar, Clyde heads up Pixel Pro Displays along with his partner Robert Barnarsdale, and they do, I think, a bi-weekly Zoom call each week through PPD, and definitely learned quite a lot through that video series as well about xLights, as well as the numerous videos that they have on tips and trips and so much. So I encourage you to check that out if you haven't already.
The xLights project exists because of people like you. Help continue the project by making a donation today at xlights.org/donate.